Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today, I've got 6 things to chat about real estate, and I'll share some of my own experiences over the years, what I've learned. This is to help you avoid pitfalls, scams, regrets. We'll start with number 1. Do I need a realtor to buy property in Panama? The short answer is no, you don't need one. Unlike in the States, where a realtor is more commonly used to buy property, in Panama, what you really need to have is an attorney. So there are benefits, obviously, to working with a realtor, a reputable realtor, first of all. And you can find a reputable realtor by making sure that they're licensed. Realtors get licensed with the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, so they should have a license number, and it's probably helpful if they're a member of something called ACOBEER. It's the Association of Real Estate Brokers and Promoters. So that's a nonprofit organization, and it's just kind of, I guess, a show of good faith if they are a member of that. However, oh, my cat is being so bad, scratching the couch right in front of me. However, some of you remember when I first moved to Panama and I kind of got involved with a scammy guy. He worked for Keller Williams. That was a name that I recognized from the US, and so I had instant trust. And he was from the States, so that further kind of cemented my automatic trust. Well, it turns out that that guy not only had a pretty bad reputation, but he misrepresented the books for the area that he had a license for or franchise, and another real estate professional relied on that information and purchased the franchise to the area that he had. So that was on fraudulent information, and he's no longer with Keller Williams, but that took a while to straighten out. But he's gone on to do other real estate and relocation. So, it's kind of like the Wild West here. Benefits also to, working with a realtor. They might have more information for the market, for trends that are happening in the market, neighborhoods. I think especially if you're in Panama City and looking to buy a condo, then I think it can be really worthy to go with a realtor that you trust, because they'll have the information on the different neighborhoods within the city. And also, if you're looking at a condominium, you want to get historical information on the HOA. Maybe, review the minutes from meetings. Does the building have enough funding to pay for repairs and the maintenance, or are they up for an assessment sometime soon? Those are things that you would want to know. Or is the HOA being sued, or is the developer being sued? Those are all really important things that you would want to know. Some people feel that it's better not to buy brand new construction for a condominium, because you want to give the building time to settle, let that concrete cure and do what it's going to do. There are things that pop up in a building that need to get fixed. Hopefully, it's nothing major, but you just never know. So therefore, having some time, letting the building, just age a little bit, can be beneficial. So you don't have to have a realtor, but you do have to have an attorney, because the attorney is going to be the person that researches into public records, on the finca number. So the finca number is like the legal number that identifies the parcel of property. And that's available in public records, but obviously if you're not familiar with the public record system or understand Spanish, that would be something that you would want the attorney to research. I was able to do it once when I was looking at one of the properties in El Valle, and I found pages and pages of, bad things, liens that were against the property that the real estate agent had no idea about. They claimed it was some simple little thing that needed to be fixed paperwork-wise, but the lien was actually preventing the sale of that property until something was remedied. I believe it was a personal lawsuit. I can't recall the specifics. So the attorney is also, just an FYI, I think coming from different countries, we might assume that there's a very high standard to be an attorney, but in Panama, after high school, if you go for 2 years of specialized school, you become an attorney. Now, certainly, some attorneys are going to go for longer education, but some aren't. And there's not necessarily a differentiation of their practice. So that's also just something to consider. In hindsight, I generally like to support smaller businesses, individual entrepreneurs. In hindsight, I think what I would have done was met with a larger firm when I was doing my immigration. I had reached out to one of the big firms by email and I never heard back from them, and I just took that as a bad faith example. I did hear back from them a year after I had sent that email. I have learned since that emails just aren't necessarily a really typical thing. So you have to be more proactive. You might have to make a few phone calls or send a few emails or get a WhatsApp number. And don't necessarily judge that as a way that a business is going to conduct their business. But I probably would have consulted with a larger firm just for my immigration needs, and possibly then for using a real estate attorney, you might feel more comfortable going with a larger established law firm that has a big presence. If you are going to go with a larger law firm, I think it would be important to discern whether you're going to be in contact with the attorney or one of their associates, just so you know what you're getting into, what to expect. Because I know that I like to speak with the person that I initially establish a relationship with, but sometimes these larger law firms just, have their associate or assistant handle calls, emails, different correspondence. So I would just want to know those things up front. My electricity is flickering. This is one of those common things that happen in Panama. 2 is doing your due diligence. So that covers everything. Do your due diligence with finding an attorney or finding a real estate agent, whichever way you're going to go, or both, because you're going to need a lawyer. So if you have an agent, then you are going to have to use a lawyer as well. Get referrals, read online reviews. This is, one of those areas where I say it's a little tricky because people won't post a negative review in any of the Facebook groups because they're afraid of the libel laws here in Panama. They're afraid that they'll, get sued or face some type of repercussions from stating something negative. As you noticed, I'm not mentioning the name of the person who was with Keller Williams, who had legal action brought against him. So on property in particular, you want to have your attorney do research on the finca number, because there are two different types of property here in Panama. There's titled property, and there's something called ROP, which is right of possession. Right of possession can be a very high risk type of purchase, unless you've been here for a long time, unless you really understand how right of possession works. It's basically rights of possession to that land. And so someone may have had the property for a long time, built the structures on the property, but if somebody in a family claims and can show proof that, their great grandparents had that property, then you can be in a lot of legal trouble and financial issues if you've put money down on that property. And then it takes some time to get ROP property titled. So that can be a time and cost intensive endeavor to do. My recommendation would be stick to titled property, but if you're not averse to risk, you can go for it, right? There are a lot of ROP properties. Of course, they're priced lower than titled property because you are assuming that risk. So the attorney's going to do research on the finca number, which is important because you want to make sure that what the seller is representing is actually factual for the parcel of land, the square meters. Are there any structures that are registered on the property? Because it's very common for properties to not have any structures registered with the registro público, the public registry. That contributes to your decision making about the kind of offer that you're going to make, or any financial responsibilities that you're going to have to take to register any structures that are on the property. Also, sometimes there are boundary issues, or maybe, like in one case where I looked at a property here, there was a small sliver on the property that was actually owned by a different owner, but that this seller was using over the years. Did I want to get involved in that? I don't know. When you're emotionally invested in a property, of course, you're like, yes, I'll do anything. I'll just fix it in the end. I just love this place. It also was on a river. So the water changes the property line over time. You also have to consider, in times of heavy rain, how much is that river going to flood? Is that going to affect any structures on the property, or is it, far enough away where it's not going to be an issue? I mentioned before, they'll see if there are any liens against the property or any legal issues that are, keeping the property encumbered and preventing a sale. I've noticed that it's kind of common that people won't pay their property tax, maybe for many, many years. So when you have a deal to buy a property, the seller has to pay their property taxes. They have to clear that and, pay it. Now, they have to have the money to do that. So you might, get well into a deal, but if the person owes like $15,000 in property taxes or $30,000, how are they going to come up with that money? I don't believe that they can use your deposit toward that property tax payment, because I don't think that is legal. But you'd have to check with your attorney or your trusted real estate agent. Those are things to consider as well. You want to get information on whether the property tax has already been paid up to date, or if not, maybe the attorney or the realtor can ask the seller if they have the funds. So you also have to make sure that the seller has the right to sell the property. There are weird situations that happen where, maybe it's a large family that owns a home and maybe 3 out of the 5 owners agree that they want to sell the property, but 2 others don't want to sell it. Or maybe the person showing you the property doesn't even have the right to sell the property. Maybe they just have keys, but they don't even have the legal right to show or sell the property. Those things have happened, so you have to do your due diligence. You can even, talk to neighbors. That's a really great way to get information on not only the property, but the neighborhood, if there are any circumstances or issues that they know about, that maybe they would inform you so that you can be aware in going forward with a purchase. An interesting thing that you'll find in Panama for land and home purchases, not in condos, but you might find that a seller wants to have 2 contracts because they don't want to pay the sales tax on the full amount. So let's say that they are selling the property for $500,000, but legally it's only been registered on public record at, $250,000. And so they may want to only sell it for $300,000 so that they only pay sales tax on that additional $50,000. So they might ask you to have 2 contracts. It's illegal, but this does happen. And I've had, I think, 2 people ask me to do that type of structure. And I also know of people who've been asked by the seller to do that. The risk in that is that when you go to sell the property, you are going to take the burden of all of those gains. So that's something to consider. Also just when you're thinking about whether you do want to invest in a property to purchase instead of renting. 3 is, can I get a mortgage? You might have $100,000, but you're in love with a $400,000 property and you just figure you can get a mortgage, right? No, not so easy. Getting a mortgage in Panama is very challenging. You have to go through a lot of verification to get approval. You have to have about 30% down for your down payment, and the interest rate is going to be significantly higher. Of course, you can try and arrange seller financing. You can try and go through private money lending, but it's best to have cash when you're looking to buy property in Panama. It gives you a much better negotiation advantage point, and things can happen a little more quickly when you have, the cash to buy. And I would recommend that you actually have the cash in your account ready and waiting, and you're ready to just make that offer. Because if you're waiting on a property to sell in order to get the funds, I've had this happen, and I lost a $5,000 down payment because I didn't have the sale proceeds to purchase the condo that I was in contract to purchase. One interesting thing is that there's no escrow account in Panama. That's just not a thing that happens here. It's kind of scary when you realize, I just have to give the seller all the money. But you do it in the office of your attorney, and things are notarized. There are some ways that you can kind of have an escrow account, but I would recommend doing that in like a third party account, not your attorney or real estate agent's account, because there have been stories of people not returning that money. The money goes into a personal account of an attorney or a realtor, and then the buyer, you, never see that money again. This can also happen with developers. So in that case, you want to put the money that you're giving a developer in an account that's at the bank where there are certain parameters that have to be met in order for funds to be released to the developer. I would not recommend giving the developer the cash. I think that is too risky. But this is where you want to get the advice from your trustworthy attorney. Speaking of trustworthy attorneys, there's no bar association in Panama. So if you do have an issue, it's not like you can register a complaint with the bar association, or it's not like you can go to a website and see if an attorney has violations or complaints against them, lawsuits against them. I believe the entity that you'd have to go through is ACODECO. It's like a consumer protection agency. I haven't been through that process. I don't know how lengthy it is to go through filing with ACODECO. 4 is, how do you determine the value of a property? So I think in a condo environment, it's a lot easier to determine value because you have sales that you can see that reflect what the market is willing to pay. There is an appraisal organization that I heard of called Panacomps. I think they'd probably be helpful in determining, especially with condominiums. In houses and land, it's much more complicated because you can have, transfer of rights. You can have someone selling under duress. You can have that contract type of scenario where the sale price is reflecting something lower than was actually agreed upon. There's all sorts of different ways that people structure real estate deals and different motivations for people to sell. But with a condo, it's a little bit more straightforward. So you can check out that Panacomps database. I think there's also another appraisal firm that's in the city. If you're in a smaller town and it's a house, sometimes people just put a price on the property and they have no idea what their neighbor's property has sold for, or they have that asking price that they've been asking for 5 years and they've had 3 offers, but they don't accept them because they're holding out for, the $800,000 that they believe their property is worth. Meanwhile, in those 5 years, they're not doing any maintenance on the property. The roof is falling apart. There's leaks. There's all sorts of problems, but they might not be on site. They don't see those things. And so in their mind, no, it's worth $800,000. They might not be a serious seller. And so they're just testing the market. They're just hoping to get the price that, they would sell if someone came to them with that offer. You also just have to think about if the seller has any legal issues that they need to fix before selling the property. So that was the case with a couple of properties that I looked at. And in one of them, the seller just kept saying, oh, it's something with, the registro publico, I have to get it straightened out. Oh, the finca number this, and oh, my attorney's taking care of that. When you start hearing things like that, take that as a sign and a red flag. If they were really serious about selling the property, they would have straightened those things out years ago. or they'd have it straightened out so that they can show the buyer, look, here's the plot map, this is the finca number, have your attorney go, research this. They would have things prepared. They wouldn't be stalling, and these things wouldn't be taking months and in some cases years for them to remedy. There are plenty of other properties. Don't go down that path. It only leads to heartbreak. I know this from personal experience. This is why it's also recommended to rent for at least a year in the area where you might want to buy, because you will get to know a lot of information. You'll get to know information from locals, from expats, from professionals that you're meeting and developing relationships with. And that's really where you get your best source of information, because you'll hear stories of, oh yeah, that house, that's been on the market for 5 years. They're just stubbornly holding on to a number that they want to get. Or you hear, oh yeah, that property, it floods in high rainy seasons, or any number of different issues or scenarios. Or you may hear about a great find that, this expat is selling and they're really willing to negotiate because they're leaving the country, and maybe there's financial issues, medical issues, whatever it may be. So you can hear of some good deals through word of mouth. You also want to get at least a rudimentary inspection on a house that you're considering purchasing. Have someone look at the roof, have them look at the electrical, any signs of plumbing that might indicate that there are any leaks, any issues. The nice thing is that construction is pretty simple in Panama. It's mostly concrete block. If you do have any wood on a house that you're thinking of buying, look for evidence of termites, because termites are very prolific here in Panama, and they can destroy a home pretty quickly. You want to look at around the windows, look at the window casings, look at the condition of the windows, look at the air conditioners, I guess. There's no central air conditioning, but if you don't have to lay out money for new air conditioning, you don't want to have to do that. So have someone look at the air conditioning units if they are part of the property that you're thinking of buying. If there's a way for someone to check a foundation, I would recommend having that done. And if you can get information on the septic, the age of the septic system, when was the last time that it was cleaned out, understand the location of the leach field, because you don't want to build over that. So you want to be aware of where the location is. And if you see vegetation that's, dead or any, pooling of water, that's an indication that the leach field is not functioning properly. So those are things that I would recommend in helping you determine a value for the property. 5, document everything for your records. This is just a helpful practice in general, but I think especially here in Panama, when you're dealing with a system that you're not familiar with, it's especially important, because a lot of things are agreed upon in conversations, but if you don't have something in writing, there's a lot of problems that can create. So let's say that you are dealing with a seller on your own and you're having discussions about purchasing a property. I would follow up with an email to that person. I wouldn't rely only on WhatsApp, because those messages can disappear. I mean, if you're going to do WhatsApp, you could do a screenshot, or take a picture of that conversation. But I think it's best to have an email record. And I'd be a little suspicious of someone who doesn't want to correspond with you via email. That's a red flag. That's just how business is conducted in the modern world. So someone who wants to avoid having anything written down, I would just see that as a big red flag. I would also document phone conversations, write down the date, who you talked to, what was said, what was agreed upon. I would follow up with an email and make sure that they're going to do what they said they were going to do, because time can pass and attorneys, agents, sellers may not follow up on what they said that they were going to do. So I think that being proactive is best practice to do. I will say that as much as I like to rely on email, I have found that a lot of Panamanian businesses don't conduct business by email. I'd sent an email to a big law firm, didn't hear back for a year, but I think that's just not super common for them to conduct business, or maybe they don't look at those email inboxes from website forms, because I've had that happen with a number of different businesses in Panama. So I would be persistent, go through WhatsApp, make a phone call. Don't be too discouraged, I guess, if you don't hear back from email. Cut people a little bit of slack in that sense. But once you've established an email connection, then if too much time is going by, I would definitely consider that when you're thinking about continuing doing business with that person. 6 would be, don't buy into the BS. I admit that I am gullible and I can easily be persuaded, I guess. You believe what you want to believe. When I'm hearing something that I already think is partially true. So when I came to Panama and saw the real estate prices and I compared that to California, where I was moving from, everything here seemed like an amazing deal. A condo by the beach for $200,000, that's crazy. I've got to buy now. And when you have a real estate agent saying, yes, you have to buy now, don't delay. Prices are never going to be like this. This is the time to buy. I've never seen prices this low. Prices are only going to go up. This is a very reputable builder. Those things are not true necessarily, because even reputable builders, in some buildings, there are problems. So for example, in the condo that I was going to buy, there were some water leak issues that I don't know if they're resolved to this day. But even a reputable builder, there can be issues in a building. That's why it might be good to not buy brand new construction, and don't even get me started on pre-construction. I don't think you should do that. But talk to your reputable attorney or real estate agent. But don't believe the hype that developer is going to tell you, because there are a lot of developments that have their pretty renderings drawn up, and then you go look at the property, there's no pool, there's no palm trees, there's no game room, there's no spa. So just really be careful about that. Unless you have experience in the real estate industry with developers, and if you consider yourself very knowledgeable, I would caution against getting into pre-construction deals. There are delays that happen. There are funds that run out. Personally, I just don't think it's worth the risk. Don't believe anyone that says the market is hot. You're going to make money on your investment. They don't they can't claim that to be true, because appreciation doesn't work here in Panama the same way that it works in the United States. And I can't speak to the market in Canada or other countries because I'm not familiar with them. So try not to get caught up in your excitement, enthusiasm, that limerence of, being in Panama and seeing all these amazing condos by the beach or wherever it might be. Take your time, rent, at least for a year. You've got to get through rainy season, dry season, got to get to know the neighborhood, the traffic patterns, the noise levels. I don't know if you can hear the weed whacker in the distance here. Take your time, have a level head, don't buy into the shiny object statements that are going to be put forth from unscrupulous or scammy people. If and when you do decide to purchase a property, please understand that that is not going to be liquid for quite some time. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe. I'd really like to get to my goal of 5,000 subscribers, and check out my little shop for cute tumblers like this and t-shirts. See you next time.